An idol to his nationals, a god of Naples, and a generation's hero, the 80s belonged to Diego Maradona. But by the start of the next decade, his light was dimming. Dark clouds had been gathering for years now, as rumours of ties to the Camorra, the Neapolitan mafia, began to sour public opinion, while his mounting tax bill offered another reason to get out of Italy. The infamous problem was his substance abuse that accompanied him throughout his best years. Everyone suspected it, but he'd evaded tests by any means and kept his secret until March of '91.
Disgraced soccer star Diego Maradona is now in hiding after being hit with a 15-month worldwide suspension.
This joined the long list of black marks Napoli's board had tallied against the Argentine, and after years of leniency, privilege and special status, this was the tipping point. Diego was done. Next steps were tough. His image had flipped, now seen as less brilliant, more burden, so the big clubs weren't interested, but he didn't mind. Already the greatest ever by popular vote, he'd brought pride and glory to an outcasted city in the world's best league, and would leave a hero no matter what. Though the 32-year-old was too expensive for Boca Juniors, and so his agent Marcus Franchi flew from Italy to Spain to France, shopping his name around, while his client was gaining weight and drifting. They got close to an agreement, but Marseille ultimately passed. Too big a risk, his name no longer enough, the decline perhaps already too steep to reverse. However, there was one man who hadn't forgotten the genius beneath. Carlos Bilardo, the man who coached La Albiceleste to their second World Cup trophy in 1986. That had been the summer that the 10 peaked, hitting perhaps the highest level of any individual ever in the sport. Bilardo had just been sweet-talked out of a managerial break by an offer from Sevilla, and one of his first requests was to bring Diego to Andalusia. Despite everything, Napoli's president wasn't keen to let go of a local hero, seen as the saviour of the south that households would have a picture of above their beds as if he were a deity. Months of negotiation carried across the summer, and even Sepp Blatter got involved. As he was such a star, FIFA needed him to be playing, and so at their HQ an agreement was made. $7.5 million for his release and transfer to Sevilla FC. As news broke, this humble mid-table club, who'd last lifted silverware back in the 60s, was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, followed and covered by journalists from all over the world. Stitching his name into any piece of merch they could and parading him around on a tour, the business side of the deal was immediate, but that's not all he was there for. There was already a plan in motion to revive Los Nervinenses, kicked off by a couple of emerging stars, and El Diego was the spark to ignite the dressing room, as these kids were now sharing it with their idol. They wouldn't argue any of the perks given to him upon arrival, nor the armband. Still, he hadn't played consistently for 2 years now, and was far from peak condition, so his debut at El Pisuan had a lot to answer for. Linking up the midfield and attack from that second striker role he'd made his own, his quick thinking and fast feet were evident, though also was his lost explosiveness and at least a yard of pace. Topping off his home debut with a penalty for a 1-0 win, it was a fine first step on this road to a resurgence. With each game, he seemed closer and closer to the Maradona we fell in love with, even cutting his hair to resemble that 86 peak. Lying just behind Davor Suker, who'd struggled to impress in his first year, it turned out all the Croatian needed was a maestro to bring him out of his shell, and a great partnership was born. The 10 started to run games again, floating freely as the young Gonche, whom everything went through. The team were visibly getting better in his company, and results proved it. Maradona's well known for his belief in the work hard, play hard mantra, and in these early days, his desire to win La Liga was stronger than that to go out with his huge entourage to the Sevilla strip. Everything revolved around him. Training was no longer at dawn. Bilardo had moved it to the afternoon so Diego could have a lie-in and come in energized. That's all that mattered, because as their linchpin, if he played well, Sevilla would win. From that steady start to those months on the rise, he reached the top of the bell curve that winter, turning up in the biggest of games against Real Madrid with a virtuoso showing to define his time in Spain. With intricate passing and mazy runs, the now fully fit and fully confident Argentine took the reins off Real as title talks started to sound less crazy. He'd come from his lowest ditch to once again be a superstar in Spain. Money was up, morale was high, and Maradona was happy.
Y si ganamos me va a ser más lindo todavía. ¿Se hace un gol? Mucho más lindo.
But the cobwebs were soon swept away, revealing his true intentions. As a patriot, Maradona's first love was always the blue and white stripes of his homeland. So once he'd regained form and caught the attention of the selectors, he prioritised his national duty at the expense of Sevilla. Called up for the first time in 2 years, he went against the orders of the board and crossed the Atlantic for a friendly that February while the club were fighting for the title. From this point, his relationship with the higher-ups just kept getting worse. Pressure piled on the skipper's shoulders from all angles, from the fans to the brutal Spanish media, testing more than just his football. His work ethic soon died out, missing training sessions and giving sloppy performances while starting to balloon again. El Diego's demons had clawed their way back, and thanks to a private detective the board hired, stories started emerging from his nights out, from speeding around the city in his Porsche to slipping back into addiction. The euphoria had given way, and the past repeated. Maradona's infectious charisma had nonetheless gripped the dressing room. He'd become a mentor to the youngsters and a friend to the veterans. If he was happy, angry, excited or bored, they all felt it themselves, so as soon as his focus slipped, Sevilla collapsed. Completely sabotaging his team, Bilardo, who'd been his biggest advocate, ran out of patience. Bitterness was born out of false promise, and instead of trying to play beautiful football, they became a so-called gang of bandits. The whole league hated them, turning each match into a fight, and the fans, sick of seeing riot police at their ground, demanded a change. Sevilla had made football's most unstable man their pillar, and with his frequent no-shows, their campaign crumbled. Withholding over €600,000 of his wages as punishment and deemed not fit to play golf by the vice president, Maradona left on the worst possible terms. Instead of Maradona wiping his hands clean of Europe, Europe had washed its hands of him, so the only place now was home. With the World Cup a year away, Newell's old boys offered him refuge, just enough time to sharpen, recover, and be ready for the US. A redemption arc cut short, Maradona's Sevilla diaries are filled with humour, drama, and flashes of brilliance, but ultimately, it's a tragedy. What came after just adds to the sadness. Captaining Argentina through qualifying and arriving at match day 1, where a great goal was overshadowed by a celebration that took away the veil. Another failed drug test confirmed our suspicions, so FIFA booted him out and never let him back in. Too famous, too much power, and way too much access. A powerhouse like Diego Maradona couldn't be contained, and Sevilla found that out far too late.